This is A Full Reset, the podcast where four women from the ages of none to your business analyze the areas of their lives they'd like a redo and celebrate the lessons learned in their never-ending coming-of-age stories. Now meet the crew. Ms. No One Loved the Metaphor More, Jenny Booth Potter, a.k.a. J Boogie, the Emmy-nominated producer who's always down for a good adventure and a bad idea, Stephanie McBee. She has clean hands and a dirty mouth, Brooke Campbell. And the New York Times best-selling author who's a menace to the public's conscience, Austin Channing Brown. This is A Full Reset.
It's time for a full reset.
Here we are, the Full Reset podcast.
What?
I'm trying very hard not to sing that. I took real effort not to sing it. I'm so excited to be here. We are in Chicago, my favorite city, the city that made me an adult. It did. It made me an adult. And I am so filled with gratitude to be here with all of you. I was going to say that I have never imagined this, but I think the opposite is actually true, that I imagined it and thought never. Never. What circumstances would have to happen for me to be here with Stephanie McBee?
What up? What up?
Who is my first and best friend.
It's me.
Since junior high. And I've just been
We go back.
unwilling to let you go.
Yes, that you have not. That
She
grip
loves
is tight.
it.
That
What did you
grip
say
is
yesterday that she told your other friends that?
kick rocks. She told them all to kick rocks. Legit, that's how she showed up in my life. You showed up and was like, kick rocks.
I can be a little selfish with my friends.
I had a friend. She was like, no more. This ends today.
She wasn't good enough, but we're going to move on.
She didn't deserve you.
She didn't deserve you.
No, thank you. Thank
So
you.
I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. I'm
That you
glad to
ditched
be
that friend.
here. So sad. It had to happen.
And Brooke Campbell,
What is this
Who
bow?
who I have known since I was 14, entering high school. Brooke thought she was my mama. She still thinks she's my mama.
Not really changed. It's accurate.
Very.
And Jenny Booth Potter.
You know I'm
This is our like reunion city. This is where we
This is
met.
our reunion city. Since our college days, we have been inseparable.
It's true.
You have been on every project I've ever done. And now
I'm listing them because there are a lot.
there's a lot.
There's a lot. I got to be a witness when you signed up for your Squarespace account to do your very first blog.
That's right.
And I gave you your very first deadline.
Yes.
I said MLK weekend, you have to have your first post up.
I am a writer because you were like, get your shit together.
That's not why you are a disciplined writer, because I was like, you were always a writer.
Oh,
You just
yes.
needed the teeniest,
This is so precious.
teeniest
I know.
push.
This is
Now
this
everyone,
is so precious.
everyone can see why I keep you all around.
Because we're pushy and we cut out other friends for you.
This feels very accurate.
And we're maternal.
And we have come together to do a podcast called The Full Reset.
Yeah.
Ladies,
did.
why do we need the full reset?
Why don't
We
we?
have time for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to explore.
We ain't got time for
right?
that. That's why we here. Like, that's literally why we're here. Is the point.
That's fair.
Nothing but time to talk about a full reset.
So
Yeah, I mean,
many
I think the
things.
pandemic was definitely like a magnifying glass on so many things happening. And I feel like we haven't really been able to fully process together in conversation. I think there was a lot of isolated learnings that were happening and really holding things up and saying, oh, does this have to continue the way it is, or can we actually like do some things over? And so I think we need a full reset because it actually allows us to dream and imagine And I think we do that best when we do that together. And so I think that is the heart of what we're going to be exploring is it's not going down memory lane to be like shame filled or like, like, whoa, what was our past? But I think it's to say that past doesn't need to be our present or our future, and let's dream together. So, I mean, that's real meta and lofty. I mean, some of
meta.
our topics are not going to be like
Very meta.
that deep necessarily, but I think there's a depth to saying how do we go forward better, healthier, more healed, more full, more free.
Absolutely. I think for me, it's part of this podcast is I wanted a little bit more joy in life, and we can get stuck sometimes in talking about like all the regrets and especially after the pandemic. I think it was such an eye opener for me with all the loss and grief. It was just like, okay, I regret that I wasn't there for this person. You know, a little bit more. I regret I didn't give enough time to this person. But then I was like, okay, I can't sit in this. This is just so. If there's another way to reframe the things that we regret, or and to have a space to talk about it, because I think it was also sitting and feeling like all of this shame or regret or whatever is just pent up inside.
Yes.
And there's no place to share and talk about this stuff where it's like okay to do that. So it's like creating like, where's that community? Like, who's that person? Who's my people that get it? And I can talk about the things that I regret. I can talk about the things that I struggle with or whatever, or thinking back on the past of patterns of behaviors, but not be judged at the same time.
Yes.
Like, can I just get this out and talk about it and be like, and it happened. And if you can be like, yeah, you can. I see you, boo. It happened to me too. Then it's like, oh, okay, we all in this thing together. We all have some regrets in certain areas I may not have talked about before. Cool. Love it. So I think for me, it was like, yeah, I need a reset, and I need to do it in a space where I know we can talk about that.
Right.
That shit.
Right.
That real shit.
Yeah.
I think that's it. We don't have to go all the way
I was
around,
about to
but
say, am I being asked why?
Just wanted to open the floor. That's all.
Since I think all we've gotten from you is your
Right, exactly.
no,
But if you don't have
we
anything,
did.
I just
No, I mean, I think I need one because, gosh, I realized that, life, living is about evolution. And so, unless you talk about the things that you've learned or that you need to revolt against, then, then you don't know. So, just to discuss, like, you know what, this doesn't serve me anymore. I didn't maybe do this how I would do it now, but I didn't know what I know now. So, So I think it's important to, engage with ourselves on the road that we go on and look back and be like, oh, I've learned this, I've changed in this way. Because I feel like I am very much so me. I feel like I've always been. But in the same note, I hope that I am not who I was at 18. I would hope.
you will hope.
I was
right.
But in a lot of ways I am, and I hope that the good parts of me and who I am at my core is the same. But I would hope that I evolve.
Yeah.
yeah. And how do we mark that unless we go back and revisit? And as you were talking, Brooke, I was struck with we're in Chicago, which is where Austin and I met, and we met on this trip, which is called Sankofa, and it's a Swahili word which means looking back in order to move forward. And I think that is really the impetus of what we're trying to do. We're not trying to look back to stay in the past or to repeat past mistakes or trauma. It's to evolve to what you were saying. And so I just love that there's purpose in revisiting these things. It's not just to feel bad or to stay stuck. It's to actually get us unstuck to continue our evolutionary growth process.
Indeed.
So we have so many fun topics and interesting topics that we're going to be talking about. But I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did was roll out with our very first episode, talking a lot about reimagining identity and how we see ourselves. And to quote Marion Wright Edelman, we cannot be what we cannot see. And so I would love to talk more about our identity, how we see ourselves, who helped us see who we are. Because I think that's one of the things that the four of us have really I think there's a lot of digging that we're doing as we're in our mid to late 30s and kind of looking at ourselves and saying, what do I want to be known for? Who am I really? Yes. And what am I leaving for people that are watching me? Right?
Legacy.
Like,
Legacy.
what's my legacy? And so, I think there's a lot of reimagining happening and dreaming and reflecting on who those role models have been for us. So as you all think about maybe the people in your life that have helped you grow into yourself, are there people that come to mind that you're like, I literally would not be who I am today if not for their example?
I love that question.
Do you have any? It sounds like you have an answer.
Well, I feel like I have several.
Okay.
Right. And there are very obvious answers. My grandmother, I was 19 before my great grandmother passed, so I still have very rich memories of her. Obviously, my mom, right? We always did the obligatory generations photo, when we were together. So I just feel very clear about their role in making me who I am. Yeah. But aside from family, my very first working experience as a teenager was an internship in a suburb outside of Cleveland called Warrensville Heights. And I went from predominantly white schools, only ever had white teachers. Now I'm 16 and I'm in this little suburb, and the entire city hall is being run by Black women. Wow. The mayor is a Black woman. Her executive assistant is a Black woman. The chief of staff is a Black woman, all the way down to the receptionist, right? Like everybody.
I wish I knew that this was existed in the city at that time, because I'd be like, can we move?
Right.
They live out for me. They look like me.
However they're running the city, looking out for
we
me.
running this?
Yeah.
We running this?
Right? Definitely wasn't a lot of that in Toledo.
Exactly. I had never seen it before, you
No.
know? And so it wasn't that I had never seen successful women or successful Black women, but they always seemed isolated in a similar way that I was isolated at school,
interesting.
right?
Yeah.
And so to walk into a space where Black women run this changed me. I'm not sure I could even give language to how it did, but it did.
Yeah.
How old were you? You were 16?
I was 16.
Yeah, that's a formative time.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, and that's at the exact right juncture where you're starting to really be like, I am 2 years away from college. I am about to maybe be involved politically and civically more real. I'm about to be an adult. Yeah. That's transformative.
You know what? Actually, I think I was 17. So
even
because
closer.
Because we were thinking about college. And that's part of the reason why my parents let me do it, because I had to live with my grandmother in order to take advantage of it. Wow. And the reason they did was because I was almost an adult.
Did you ever ask the women, I don't know how, I know you, but I also know you, and I know you're not in that environment. I could see you actually really leaning into maybe more your extroverted side, or your curiosity, your curiosity could maybe take over from any introverted tendencies. Did you ever ask them what does this feel like for you? Is it as magic? Did you ever?
It as magical for
you
as for me?
Yeah,
that I'm here.
Not that I'm here. That what this working
that
environment.
We're here.
Yeah,
Do you see what you ladies are doing for me in this
Exactly.
moment right now, and what I'm doing for you to see me?
I'm not
see you.
Oh my gosh.
See me. See you. I got what you're saying. No, that for real. I agree with Jenny. I think that's.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Don't get used to that.
Don't get used to that. Whatever. We're the same person. Keep going.
It was so obviously normal for them.
Yeah, totally.
It was just their everyday. It's what they did every day. The city was predominantly Black. It was completely and entirely normal for them. Which was wonderful, because I think that's why I was able to just sink into it. Because they didn't think they were doing anything special.
Yeah, they were.
Right? They were like, this is how it is and should be and will be.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's not make this so otherworldly.
Right. This is
not
repeatable.
repeatable.
We're just working. We got work to do.
This is what we do. This is what we do.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was wonderful. So I would just hop between their departments. So in the morning, the Mayor Marsha L. Fudge, she is now a congresswoman. She would come in the mornings and she would hand me a newspaper. And she would let me read the newspaper, and then she'd like go do whatever she needed to do in her office. She'd come out for lunch, and she'd pick an article and ask me to explain what I learned in the article. And then she would like ask me questions it was so clearly her investing in me, even just for 5 minutes a day, you know? And that's what it felt like. It did feel like every single person who worked there was making their own deposit into who I was as a person and affirming me, you know, like they didn't treat me like a little 17-year-old walking around, you know, it was great.
Wow. That's dope. I feel like I had a similar experience, not necessarily like being immersed in like the office, like watching them work, but I guess maybe a little bit. There was a woman who went to my church growing up that became like this mentor figure, but also just inspiration for what it looks like to be a strong Black woman. And you see that, you know, you see the whole like, oh, being a strong Black woman and what it takes to be a strong Black woman. But I think at maybe 12, 11 years old, you don't really know what that looks like until like it's modeled in such like a, I don't know, it was like illuminating way that so she was like this big chief or something, head honcho at our like one of the hospitals in the city. And so it was amazing kind of like seeing her in that position, that role, like this Black woman who's like running this hospital.
Right.
Like she was setting up big events at the hospital, big fundraisers at the hospital, but it wasn't just like that. She was like within the system, but had the credentials, had the education to be there, smart, intelligent, gorgeous brown-skinned woman that I'm like, she looks like me, you know, like, and she is doing the damn thing. Like she has this personality of that commands like attention, but the energy is like infectious. And so whatever energy she comes at you with, like you feel it and you're giving it right back. So I was watching that like, this is amazing. This woman is, and so she kind of took me as like, you know, the daughter she never had and would take me to the hospital and see how she ran things and have me meeting celebrities who would come in town. And I was really into basketball. So she was like, I got one for you. The women's basketball team were just at the Olympics. I'm having one of them come and speak to different youth in the city. I'm going to make sure they meet you, Stephanie. And so I met Rebecca Lobo and had a whole write-up on me in the Toledo Blade. I was a feature in my basketball skills. But for her to see me and then for me to see her, kind of what you were saying, and then I'm watching her, she introduced me to her sorority. Like, here's what it looks like to see a sea of Black women who are all educated, who are all pursuing their dreams or their passions, or they're in search of those dreams and passions, and they're not stopping until they get it. And here's what we do, and here's how we come together collectively to pour love on each other. And I was just like in awe, like, this is beautiful. This is what I want to. What do I have to do to be a part? Like I'm 10 and I'm trying to. Where's the applications? I'm trying to stroll. I'm trying to step. Let me do my audition right now. I don't know what it takes, but I'm ready, ladies.
Set my sights.
Right? Like I'm already getting lined up. Like it was crazy, but that's how impactful it was on me to see it, and then it. I mean, I kid you not, it was almost like I feel limitless. And I think you, I love that. I think y'all probably saw it as we were growing up. Like I would do some of the most random things, but it was like, I want to learn how to play the piano and nothing's going to stop me. Cause I saw it was like modeled in a way. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to play the drums. Like anything that I actually wanted to try to do, it showed me that there is a way to do it. There's a way to make that happen. And I think that really like deposited early that I'm like, okay, now I can trace back some of these things that just make sense. But it's beautiful. That's like, oh, these powerful, beautiful Black women did that. Who I didn't even really know. No like personal connection to like, you know, that organization. But it was like, I want that.
It's so interesting in both your examples. I know you were 17, but being a 10-year-old, like to already recognize that this is like special and unique, and this is not what like the majority of the world is going to offer me as a young Black girl.
Yeah.
Like, it makes me both like really happy for you that you had those moments, and also like incredibly sad that even at 10, it was like you'd already experienced. I'm projecting. So tell me, like, what did you experience that you knew that like it took seeing that for you to be like, I have the confidence to try these things, as opposed to on your own in your community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think for me at that age, I experienced I was familiar with racism, right? I was familiar with colorism.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were things that even as a 10-year-old, I experienced, saw, or heard, like you mentioned growing up with, being at your grandmother's house. And I think even the stories that were shared, like I grew up with my grandmother and great-grandmother present. My great-grandmother lived until like, I think 5 years ago. Like she was like in her 90s. Wow. And so I've had her in my life up until like 30, and so I'm like, for 30 years I've had to love this woman and get the love from this woman and the stories of how she lived on a plantation as, and her and my great grandfather being sharecroppers. Like, so it wasn't that far removed.
Right. It wasn't just your lived experience.
Yeah. It's their lived experiences and then what they passed down in those stories, but then also what they passed down and some of those fears of growing up for them.
That's right.
So
very real danger.
Exactly. So my teachings, my learnings, the things that I learned about how to act, how to behave, what it looks like to be Black in America, Black in Toledo, Ohio, like those were the things that's like, so it was very much present and on my mind of what someone who looks like me, here's the road that it can lead you down because other people perceive you as this, that, and the third. Yeah. And so I think to then see something that was
all these free women.
All these free women was like, oh, wait. Okay, I get you. We can all be physically free, but I think to some degree, their mindsets were still, there was a hold on feeling the freedom. So that was the part like, I see what it looks like when you can feel free to do anything. Because no longer is there someone telling you that you can't because of, at least for race.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's big.
Oh, I love that phrase, limitless.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brooke, I'm curious.
I think for mine, it was different women for different things. Like early on, definitely, I think was my mom and my sisters. Like I've got 2 older sisters and 2 brothers, but my mom was she was super, super strong, willed, very like. She's gonna have her way. She's gonna, things are gonna be how she wants them. But she also was funny, and like very funny. And we would fight. And I just remember this one time we were play fighting, and she had pinned me down and bit me on my forehead, and it hurt so bad. But I digress. Anyway, but yeah, she was fun. But she was warm, and like people just kind of like flocked to her, and they just wanted to be around her. And so it was just the idea that you can be like open and warm, but also very strong.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so and I remember she'd always tell me, which I didn't understand until probably the last few years, what it meant. But as I was coming up, she'd always say, "You need to wake up every morning, tell a man to kiss your ass." And I'm like, I don't know. What that
Is there more to that?
Right. But literally, Mom.
You're right. Like, what? Is this a metaphor? But yeah, it took me till I got older. I'm like, okay. But yeah, she was just very strong, very independent. And had made probably what people would deem as like a lot of mistakes. Like she got pregnant with my oldest sister, like 14 or 15, excuse me. And so, so like how, the optics of it, but who she was at her core was just beautiful person. And then my sisters, like my oldest sister was all like just very like she got a bunch of degrees. She was very smart, very independent. And then my other sister is very like cultured and very like she's the first person I had sushi with. And like I remember going to her college campus in like Eastern Michigan, and like she exposed me to like so many things. I'm like,
okay, so I feel like early on, at least, it was definitely just like the women in my family that were closest to me, that they're very different in like what they offered me. But but it was that, you don't have to kind of be this one pony show, that, there's like so many aspects to who you are as a woman and a Black woman. And but then I think like as I got older, then there was people closer in age to me that like inspired me. Like Miss Austin, like even before the book and all that, I remember I would come to her because she was a minister. Like
Total. I remember meeting her at 18 and being like, get her on every pulpit.
So Miss Austin, for you all who don't know, she was a minister at 14. Yes. So I met Austin, and when I was,
I'm gonna interrupt your story.
I know you wouldn't. You shit,
because
you're letting her though, Brett.
it made me
I know
so upset. Because the first day of my high school career, at the end of the day, we had gospel choir. And the gospel choir director went to my church, our church. And by the end of gospel choir, on the first day in high school, he announced to everybody that I was a minister.
And you, okay, say more.
And I felt lots of feelings because I thought this was information that I would be able to give people as I saw fit.
No.
And from then on, I was the little minister walking around high school.
all the confessionals were going to.
You didn't feel like it was an inaccurate naming. You
No,
just
it
wanted
was
to be the
true.
one to
She was
reveal
ordained
it.
and everything.
I was ordained. It was great.
You were ordained at 14?
Yeah.
Well, I got officially ordained at 19.
Okay.
But, in Black churches, I was just as much of a minister as everybody else.
Laying on the hands and everything.
I don't notice, but okay. I'm
like some good information.
I'm learning.
Okay, you can continue. I just needed to get that out. We can even edit it out. I just needed to say that
I
that
understand.
was
Yes.
a lot for me emotionally.
I can see
on
that.
the first day of high
People
school.
definitely were like coming like, so this is what happened over the weekend.
Yeah.
Can you pray for me?
Right.
Oh, I see.
They put me to work. They
Yes.
put me to work.
Yes, it
It
was.
became
it was
my identity. I
Yes.
think that's what I'm trying to
That's
say.
interesting.
It became my identity, but
And
I
not
didn't
on
make
your
that
terms.
decision.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was not fair. That wasn't
I
fair.
have feelings about it.
But she was inspirational.
Absolutely.
But then even like once you become older, and then there was a book, I'm like, I can do that stuff. And then this one was like working in the industry.
That's gotta be this one.
Well, I'm upset
This
with her.
one?
I'm upset with her because she did not sleep with me last night. She rathered to sleep on the couch.
Yeah, I won't sleep with you
That
last
sounds
night.
And
so
I'm
funny.
still very angry about
You
it.
tomorrow night.
Folks do not listen.
For tat happening
I know,
here.
her little
behind
narrow
the scenes.
tail
together.
does not
This
listen.
is not happening.
Anyway,
That sounds like
I know I'm irresistible, Brooke, but
anyways, I am older, and she should listen to the things that I
okay,
tell
but
her.
this
to
was
do.
not consensual, so we're moving.
thank you. There we go.
I did not have her consent.
Respect.
I don't
me,
care.
please.
I don't.
Respect my body.
The
I
minister
do
didn't
not.
respect the minister in training. We just gotta.
I respect her as long as she's doing what I'm asking
You
her
were
to do.
saying, ma'am.
I was saying that then this one and her brother, who I adore, but then they were like, I had always wanted to, like my dream. I was like, oh, I'm gonna, right. I'm gonna do this, but then it never seemed tangible. But then I would have to remind myself, like, no, people doing these
Right.
things.
Yeah.
Like people you are closely connected to that are doing these things. So it's very cool to have people my age to be able to like look at them, like that were inspirational as far as like the things I can do or who I can be as a woman, and like all the things. So
I love
Yeah.
that you said people your age, because I don't think I often would think of, like, I just don't. I know that I have friends that like inspire me or
Yeah.
whatnot, but I do like the idea of taking a step back and being like, wait, no, like who's really like leaving an impact on me in a way that I didn't even see or recognize, that like that we're peers,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that
That's
we're
right.
because it almost like allows for some grounding in a way that there's not this kind of removed, generational thing.
Yeah, like
or-
I actually don't have to wait until I'm 30 to be
Yes,
free.
totally.
Because there are peers modeling that for
Yes,
me
Totally.
right now.
yes, they're free
Yes.
right now.
Yes,
Yes, I
totally.
love that. I think there's something to that, like acknowledging one another. Or so has there been? You mentioned Brooke Austin being that person for you. I'm wondering, and telling her right now or saying it like
Yeah.
right now. I know it's like for this instance, but have you found yourself saying to a friend, like in real time, the impact they're leaving or how they have influenced who you are today, right now.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like, what's that expression? Like, give me my roses now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very, and again, I don't want to be all pandemic, like changed me, but I really do feel like it was a shift in my mind.
Yeah.
There were certain things that like became more urgent. I think it was like, I don't know how much time I have. I don't know how much time anyone has.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I let the people in my life that I love know that I love them, and not just know that, but like, to your point, like, say the things. So I feel like my words of affirmation within like my friends has gone up like 1,000% because I just, and so maybe it's a little bit less the like peer admiration, but I think it's just about, I don't want to ever look back at where I am and think to make it possible in any way that I got there by myself.
I know, that's right.
Right? Like, I always want to be like, like when you were like projects together, I'm like, yes, I literally, like, so much of what I have is because of Austin and because of her asking me to do things and because of me saying, of course. Like, that's just, and so I think like being on the lookout, you know, I think I've changed. How am I on the lookout to make sure that not only am I like acknowledging when those moments happen, but like seeking them out to say like, I'm not getting anywhere by myself. Yeah. And it's so much more fun to do it.
Yes.
I just sent an email this week where I was like, I have a few ideas for something, but I really love working in collaboration best. So this is just to get the ball rolling. And then can we please talk? And can we please dream about these things together? Yeah. And so I don't want to do this stuff alone. And why would we when there's so many people that are inspiring us and that are having courage? And I think courage begets courage and vision begets vision. So I'm trying to think of like specific people. And I really feel like it's bigger than that, even for me, of like, one time I told a friend, it's like, no, I'm trying to like literally live my life more communally minded and more, like, how do we bring the best of all of our things together and make something together? Like, I just think that's the type of life I want to be. And I just think, and I think like, even as you all were talking about your people and like, especially for you two, when you were talking about these like groups, actually all like, what I heard in that and was thinking about was really about like who like broke down doors for you, who, and not just broke down doors, but who opened doors into rooms that you maybe never even knew existed.
Absolutely.
And I feel like my only example of that really is like one woman, and it was when I was in high school, and she was like my, like, she was on staff with the high school ministry of my church, and she let me see things that she like let me shadow her for her job, and I got to like do stuff behind the scenes. I'd always been like doing acting, and I'd always been like on the stage, and so I got to see things behind the scenes, and that was kind of my only space of like being in a like white church. I belonged in terms of like being a white person, but like being a woman was the like obstacle, I guess. And so to see someone say, I'm going to take you by the hand and show you to these rooms was really powerful. But she wasn't showing me rooms full of other women doing what she was doing. It was other rooms full of predominantly white men doing things. And so I don't think I don't know when I've had like moments I mean, I don't know. I'm sure I could reflect on that more and think about when are moments where it's been like a bunch of women, or like, but I don't want to be in a room with a bunch of white women. So that's not the room that's not the door I want to go into and take up my seat. Hence why I'm sitting here with you all.
Jenny decided, I'm going to change the scenery on my
I would like to be in a different room, please. I'd like to be in a different conference room.
I see this room. I raise you.
Yeah, for real though. And I do think there's something really telling about that, of the like, even in entering what was such a like open door for me, it actually was like a revolving door of like the same system, and she just happened to like sneak us in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like, it was like, okay, now assimilate to, you know, like, I don't know. It wasn't like, okay, no, like we're gonna be free women in this space and change the rules of the game. It was like, okay, so
here's what it takes to be here.
Here's what it takes to be here. And that's a very different message, right? Like that's not.
Well, I love that you're saying that because I feel like that's also part of what we're describing.
Right.
Is a generational difference, right? Where because our parents had to be taught, here's what it takes to be here, right? And a lot of that got passed down, and including my own name.
Yeah, for sure.
It got to get you in the door.
Yeah.
You know? And I think there are a number of peers. One that I'm thinking of is another friend from high school, and her name is Karis. And she was so free, even at 15, at 16. In fact, I'm pretty sure we met in the 6th grade. And Karis came over to me and told me that she was no longer standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And let me tell y'all how that blew my mind. I was like,
and this is before Cap.
Right.
way before.
This is 90s.
Yeah, this is the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was the thing before Cap came around. Karis started.
Karis
said,
and when I asked her why, she said, because it's not accurate.
That's what her response was?
Yes.
How does she know that?
I was
Wow.
holy
Yeah.
macaroni.
Wow.
And she continued to live her life that way, right? That what other people perceived as rebellious, particularly adults and authority figures, only saw her as rebellious. What I saw was someone who could think for herself, someone who could make her own decisions, someone who wasn't afraid to ask questions, someone who wasn't afraid to be different, right? Karis had dreads long before the natural hair movement. I mean, she was so grounded in who she was, and that was so inspiring to me because I felt like I was carrying an identity that got handed to me. Right? And so Karis became like this access for freedom for me to decide for myself. What does it mean to be a minister? What does it mean to care about other people? What does it mean to be a Black girl? What does it mean to write all these things? I feel like she just swung the doors open and was like, let's
not
go.
Even like, it wasn't like, come on, like it wasn't this like step one is we stop saying this Pledge of Allegiance. Step two was it was just like
she was just sharing,
checking with herself and then sharing what felt
she
true
was
for
just
her.
sharing.
Yeah.
I think the coolest thing about her too is that it wasn't like you have to be like this to be in my space.
Right.
Either,
Be my mini me.
Right.
Or,
it was just like, this is who I am.
Wow.
And then, you're invited in this space, but you don't have to be, like some other version of yourself.
Right.
And
in fact, she appreciated it more
Right.
when you were grounded in yourself, even if that meant you were
Right.
completely different from her.
Totally.
Yeah.
She just wanted
Yeah. And I remember asking her, like, I would just sit and ask her, we'll just talk, and I'll just be
Yeah.
asking questions. Now, mind you, I am older. Not by much, but I am older than her. And but it was just so. She's the first person that's like, well, I'm wearing this because it makes me feel good. I'm like,
Yeah.
huh? Like,
You do that?
Wait, that's the only thing that has to matter?
but she was just so herself and like so not opposed, but just she had her own opinion.
Yes, she did.
And it was just like, that's allowed. And I just remember, like, it took me pretty much until COVID to get to that point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to revolt against stuff. And it wasn't for the sake of revolting, but for the sake of, like, I have to question everything I believe. And if I get back to that point, that's fine.
Right. Wow.
But why?
Right.
Who handed me this? Like you were saying, like, who handed me this? That this is what I'm supposed to say. Who I'm supposed to
labels.
this,
Yeah.
This rule book.
Yeah.
Or this container that I'm supposed to
Exactly.
fit inside.
And so-
I have to like change myself to fit.
But even before I got to that point, it was definitely Karis that I was just like, wow, like, damn, like, girl, like you.
She's a gift.
I can't lie.
Well, yeah,
'cause,
it's like a permission slip.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
Karis too, and we talked about this. I desperately wanted Karis to like me, like desperately.
Yeah.
Because she's so cool, but also
Right.
primarily because of everything that you both just said. Like this whole, they say you march at the beat of your own drum. Like that was her, and it was unapologetic. Even, and I think especially when it goes against the grain of what society says
Yes.
is cool,
Yeah.
what society says is, mainstream
That's
or whatever
right. She
acceptable.
couldn't care less about
she
brands,
was
about what
setting
folks was
trends.
wearing.
Yes,
Wow.
she was
She did not
setting
care.
trends well before. Like, talk about being like ahead of your time.
Right.
I feel like Karis has been ahead of her time, and I always looked at that like, girl, you are so like, can I be a part of this? Can I be?
Yeah.
Can you accept me into this? Like I said with the women, I saw them as like, how do I become a part of that?
Right.
But because Karis marched alone, there was something so incredible about that. Like, you don't have an army of women that are portraying the same style.
That's right.
Like you said, but like, no matter who you are, what you look like, what your style was, there was this kind of, be yourself with her.
That's right.
And it just reminded me of like the cool kids versus the not cool kids. So if Karis was a cool kid, but the cool kids in the school said you're not,
Right.
like fitting in that. So it makes me think of, have you ever found yourself in a space, especially because again, Karis, like unapologetically her, no matter what anyone else says.
And it came at a cost.
It came at a. That's what I want to talk about. Like, it
Yeah.
coming at a cost. Where, for me, it's like being. If we're gonna talk about being black, then being black and then being black enough.
Child.
Because I feel like
I don't know where that phrase came from, but I would like to
man.
kill it because
talk about doing a reset
so
and a
many of
redo.
us.
Right,
have-
right.
Maybe
Yes.
it's addressing that because
Black
I feel
enough.
like Karis, I would have said absolutely, like, she's black, it black, I'm down, I'm black and I'm proud type. But I feel like there's kind of like, but you're not this type of black.
Yep.
So then it's
Who
like,
said that to her?
No, I would say maybe if we looked at like at school, I don't know if anyone said it to her.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah,
just
as far as the norm of what's cool
The
or
norm.
what's acceptable, she wouldn't have been black enough. Even though, she definitely was.
down for the
Down.
cause.
She's
for the
not
cause.
standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. So,
Right.
But but it was,
But in the 90s,
Right.
that wasn't what it is today,
Yeah,
right?
that's
In the 90s,
true.
it was like, are you wearing FUBU
Right.
and Tommy
Right.
Hilfiger?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's what.
yeah.
You got on two different brands. Like, what, what are you listening to?
Does your belt
What
match
are
your
you
pants?
listening to?
Right. Yeah, nobody back then was listening to like Nina Simone. Like, what are you listening to?
right, right.
And she was.
That's the thing. If somebody
Wow.
actually checked for her playlist today,
That's
they'd
right.
be like, "Oh, you
Right.
like an OG in
Right.
this black card game."
Yeah.
Right.
Black card revoked is like
Yeah.
a prime example of like, you black enough,
Right.
like-
Right.
And I feel
Right.
like you're so right. If you go back in time to then,
Yeah.
and the way
not.
we looked at each other, or people criticized or judged you, and understanding what that is and where you fit,
Yeah.
she wouldn't have fit then.
That's right. And she was
Interesting.
actively told that she didn't fit. I mean, I think about just like the Christian circles, right? So we were in Christian schools, we went to Christian church, right? So there was a lot of Christianity around,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And Christianity doesn't really appreciate rebellion,
No.
especially not from a teenager, and especially not from a black girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Karis thinking for herself, right?
Or asking questions. Or,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It read as rebellious. And so she was not praised by adults or by the cool kids, you know what I mean, for being who she was.
Have y'all felt that? Have you been called out like that, where like you said she's been told?
Girl, I remember the first time someone called me an Oreo and I was like,
Oreos are delicious.
Yeah. You're like, wait, thank you. Oh, no, it's not good. That's not good. I don't want to be called that. Not
doing the math. I'm
this
doing the
isn't-
math.
This isn't that I'm sweet. This isn't that I'm delicious.
it was devastating.
How-
I was about to
yes,
say you didn't hit him with
say.
the thank you. You didn't hit him
Right?
with
No. I was probably somewhere in the vicinity of 10. And I had only ever gone to predominantly white schools,
Yep.
which meant that I felt black all the time.
Right.
I was,
You're like, what do you
it
mean?
didn't get any blacker than
Right.
me,
Oh my
right?
Of course I'm black.
There's like
I'm
3
the
of us.
only one here.
Right.
There's maybe
I'm the
3.
authority figure on black.
Yeah. Ask me anything. What do you want to know?
Anything, okay?
And so, but then when my parents got divorced, I ended up spending a lot of time in Cleveland suburbs because that's where my mom lived. And so during summer camps, when I spent summers with her, that was my first time being surrounded by peers who were Black. So until then, the only time I had experienced it was with my own family, you know?
Yeah.
And I couldn't make sense of, like, I was excited and then realized, I don't know. I don't know any of the jokes. I don't know.
The dances.
Like
or
the
songs.
dances, right? The contemporary songs. Like we was still listening to Luther Vandross and Whitney Houston. Like I didn't. Like the example that I use like is I knew every Whitney Houston song, but I could not participate in a conversation about why she should not marry Bobby Brown. You know, like that was
Over my head.
over my head. I didn't know.
Perfect example.
That's
I see that
amazing.
so
It
clearly.
was like,
That's perfect.
and so it felt like
Yeah.
always being like, what? I was always one step behind.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
And they went to the same schools. They listened to the same radio stations. They went to the same barber shops. You know, like they had a whole world that was familiar, and I was just dropped into it every summer.
It was
you
like
know?
an immersion experience. for you, but
Exactly.
like a weird one because you're like, I should
And I'm 10.
be with my I should fit. This
Yeah.
should be
Should fit.
Yeah.
And so that's what was painful, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
even being called an Oreo. It was being pointed out that I don't fit.
Right.
That's what hurt.
Right. And you're like, I know I don't fit at school. That's like no one needs to like spell that out. And I'm sure you got like how
And that's fine. Like
Yeah.
similar to you, like looking at the room and being like, no,
Right.
thank you. That was
Yeah.
me. I was like,
Right.
no, you can keep that.
right. But it is
I'll get my A, but
yeah. Yeah.
I'll keep my Kirk Franklin
So
version of Amazing
in
Grace.
this
Thank
like
you.
in this like immersion experience,
Right.
that's where you got called an Oreo.
Yeah,
by one
we
of
were
the
playing
kids.
on like a jungle gym outside, and I was attempting to like maybe participate in a conversation that was happening. And one of the boys looked over at me and was like, "Why do you talk like that? You sound like an Oreo." And I was like, so then I'm trying to explain, well, you know what? I don't live here. My parents are divorced. I go to a private Christian school. Like I went on this like litany trying to explain, and they were like, okay, and kept playing. But I was devastated.
They're like, we're just diagnosing here. We're not here to prescribe
know how to fix you,
solutions to the problem.
They were like, okay. Yeah, so it took a long time for me to I don't even know how to say this. It took me a long time to not be personally offended and make these kids represent all of Blackness.
Yeah.
Right? Like I had to be like, oh, one, you all are kids as well.
Yes.
Right? Like you're not adult, you're not a therapist
Yeah.
diagnosing me,
No,
right? Like
yeah.
you're kids trying to
Yes.
figure out
Yeah.
why I don't
You
fit.
didn't have me take a black inventory test,
Exactly.
and you're not here with the results.
Exactly. And two, it's true.
Yeah.
I don't talk the same.
Yeah.
I don't do the same things. Like I am growing up in a very different
to you,
environment.
But there's a whole set
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah. That's what I was
different
thinking.
kind of folks. Yeah, I don't fit into this section.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I had
Yeah.
to figure out, right? So it was a matter of one, recognizing that there were whole groups of Black people where I did fit,
Yeah.
including
Right.
church and
Right,
my own
right.
friendship groups. And
Yeah.
right, there were places where I fit. And it took me a couple more summers to appreciate the way their Blackness showed up.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of being annoyed by it.
Yeah.
Right,
Right.
or
I had to
feeling
learn
like-
how to embrace
Or
it.
feeling less than.
Feeling
Exactly.
less than
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, you
so
have to
I tried to do the
diminish
Tootsie
it.
Roll. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
I did. I need you to know that I almost won the competition. I was like
Yes, you
third
did,
in the Tootsie Roll
Austin.
competition.
You practiced.
and I was like, oh, I turned out to be pretty good at kickball. Who knew? I didn't know. But I discovered now there were other things that I never became good at, y'all. I
I
still
mean,
don't
do
know
you
how to play
know
spades.
now why Whitney
but
Houston should not have married Bobby Brown? Could you make
clear.
Okay, great.
I'm
See,
clear.
look at that.
I'm clear. Of course, now we're all wondering maybe Bobby Brown shouldn't have married Whitney, but that's a whole
That's a whole
nother.
nother.
The
yeah.
more we
whole
know.
nother thing.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We're all
We know
evolving.
more.
Should marriage as an institution even exist? I don't know. You know, I don't
We have
know.
lots of questions.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I really had to learn how to appreciate who I am
how to appreciate the places where I
Yeah.
do fit, but
Yeah.
also to appreciate places where I was initially told I don't, but I could find my way, right? I could figure out where,
Yeah.
How did you do that though?
literally one day at a time. And that's the honest to goodness truth.
Stephanie
It
would
was
like an
just-
actual like checklist.
It was one day. It was
Like the things that you do
okay,
to get there.
like okay, today I am gonna participate in the dance competition. Like normally
That's
I
what
would
I wanna know,
pretend.
yeah.
Normally I would pretend to be sick and pretend to not be feeling good. I would.
Wow.
And today I'm gonna make a different decision, and it's the only different decision. I'm still gonna eat lunch by
Yeah.
myself. I'm still gonna, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But today I'll make a different decision. And then I had a huge step in growth when I got my first little best friend in Cleveland. She lived 4 houses down. Her name is Tiffany. And she was the opposite of me in every imaginable way. She was spunky. She talked back to her mother. She cussed. She knew far more about boys than I ever needed to know until I was married. But she didn't ask me to, since I'm allergic to Karis, she
Yeah.
didn't ask me to be someone different.
Yeah.
She loved hanging out with me. We
Yeah.
went to the amusement parks, but she was the extrovert. She was
Yeah.
the risk taker. And I think she probably just felt safe with me because I was like, okay, I'll be right here when you get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I'll be right
What's
here
that
when you get
metaphor?
back.
The like someone on the ground, someone holding the kite. You were on the ground.
was on
the
holding,
ground holding her
she's flying
kite.
in the kite. That's
You know?
beautiful.
But it made, again, it was another like major step
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
being like, not only am I not you, but I need you. I need to see your boldness.
Yeah.
Right.
I love your extrovertedness.
Yeah.
I love how you allow me to come out
Yeah.
of my shell. You
But I don't
know?
need to replicate that.
I don't need to
Yeah.
replicate
Yeah.
it though. I don't
Yeah.
need to
Right.
be that.
Yeah. That it's actually doing a disservice. That's actually narrowing what blackness could be, as opposed to
Exactly.
saying you and I are
we
both are
both-
full.
Yeah.
I am not an Oreo. I am a black girl, and you are as well. And that can look however
Yeah.
we want it to
Yeah.
look.
My friend
Yeah.
Amina Brown, she's a poet, and she has a line in her poems that asks the question, "How do you, black girl?"
I love that.
And I love that she turns it into a verb. How do you, black girl? How do you, black girl?
That's so true though, because I think
So
it's so
good.
easy to feel like it's. I'm gonna say the word wrong. Is it monolithic?
Monolithic.
Monolithic.
Yes.
Monolithic. As a black person,
right.
a black woman, black Christian, like, what does all that look like? And so, it's so easy to get there. But in my experience, I feel like the coolest people I've ever met, real time, but also in hindsight, are people that just were themselves.
Totally.
And they may have not fit the mold of what that was. I remember
1000%.
just went to my high school reunion. Wow. But somebody I'm still like really close to, and we were talking there, and I'm like, he was just saying how he did not fit. And we went to a very tiny black Catholic school. And he played hockey. He talked different, but he still did it at a cost.
Yeah, at a cost.
And so he was kind of talking about how he always felt this way, but I'm like, but you were just amazing because you were just you.
Yeah.
And you did not apologize for it. You did what you did. I'm like, and you were like such an amazing adult now because you did. Like, and I feel like the coolest people, and I feel like this is my mom. I don't have any kids, but I always say that. I'm like, you know what's cool? Tell my niece this. You know what's cool? Be yourself. That's what's cool.
It sounds
She's like, okay.
Like a 90s commercial.
She's like, okay, she called me Brookie. She's like, okay, Brookie. Like, okay. I'm like, it is. Like, when you're just like yourself, it doesn't have to match up with anybody. That's cool. She's like,
I'm just like quote girl today because you think about like I think it was Roosevelt said like comparison is the thief of joy, and so I think it's the whole thing of like when we are comparing ourselves, and you're not even comparing yourself to another person, you are comparing yourself to like a community, a culture,
Right. Yeah.
like the weight of
I
that
was
is
just thinking
too
that the
much.
weight is so
but it's not even
heavy.
based.
And it's not based.
Yeah.
It's like who taught that boy that called you an Oreo?
Yeah.
What that even meant,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And like I can deduce, like he watches TV, he
Right.
sees like what's like
Yeah.
in the mainstream
Yeah.
like white culture and like what matches up with how you're
Yeah.
presenting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's doing like a disservice to like constantly be comparing, and that's just such a losing battle of like, well. Of course, it's gonna be it's gonna be here's all the ways that I do completely match up with like this culture, and then look at all these ways that I don't. But that doesn't mean
Well,
that
it's changed for everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you have a list in your head
Yeah.
of what it means to be Black enough for someone else, that means you also have one in your head for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
so it's changed not just for the other
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
but it means you're changing yourself.
I will say this:
too.
the one nice thing about this is how do I say this? Not sound insensitive. That was a nice thing about COVID for me personally. It was like such a wonderful time of self-reflectiveness, but like I had all these huge sticky notes on the wall and like writing out all these things, but it helped me get to the
I
bottom
love
of a
writing
lot
on
of
a
things.
wall.
Oh,
What
me
is it
too.
about
Oh my
writing
God,
on a
so
wall
wonderful.
that just
It
unlocks
feels rebellious
someone?
too.
But it helped me get to the bottom of a lot of things, and one of which, I'm like, why do I not feel like I'm enough in some spaces? And one was like, I don't feel like I show up like a Black woman, a Black Christian woman is supposed to show up. I'm like, I don't like have this shape. I don't like this, but does that mean that I'm not? You know what I mean?
Standing
And so,
Or like,
boldly
but
in
what
your
am I? What is
Yeah.
my identity? I am a
Right,
Black Christian
exactly.
woman. So,
but like, why
yeah.
does that not look a certain way? And then I feel like, well, is that what men like? Okay, well then I'm not desirable because I'm not, like popping out of my jeans. What does
Yeah.
Beyonce say when you? I'm like, yeah, I might be because of down here, but up here, not really. Like,
Does it matter where you pop out?
Right,
I'm
right.
jumping
You pop
out,
out
but it's
anywhere?
Exactly.
Universal.
My knees are sticking out these jeans. Is that how? Like the meat is coming
Beyonce,
out?
is this right?
Right. Like I don't know. Does the proportions matter where? But but like not feeling like, okay, is this what men like right now, like Black men, and does that make me less of a Black woman? Because I'm like, well, not really. Like
I love that
Pretty
you.
sure I'm still.
Yeah.
and that's the conclusion I came to. I'm like, you know what? I am. I'm not for everybody.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's all right.
Well, but I think
That's
it's the
okay.
whole like taking the power back of like
Yeah.
who gets to assess me, who gets to call me,
Who
what
gets to make
who
me
get
look- yeah,
like on
absolutely.
whose terms does this matter?
Yep.
And when you finally, I think like the people that inspire me most today are the ones that don't make me want to be more like them. They make me want to be
Yep.
more like myself.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Where
What's
I'm
the
like-
quote where it's like, be yourself, everybody else
It's
is
taken.
Is
Yeah.
taken.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's again, I know all these like they're so cheesy stuff, but it's like
it's
no, these are
true,
like there's
yeah.
pearls of wisdom.
Yeah.
They're helpful.
Yeah.
Because you recognize how easy it is to live
Yep.
your life doing the opposite. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I love what you're saying, Brooke, about you saying, I'm not going to let the question be, what do they think? It's
Yeah.
gonna- I
Like,
have
I
to
get
come
to
back
define it.
I get to say
Yeah,
what
I get
it
to
is.
define that, and I get
And
to.
that's empowering.
Yeah,
and
I
that
feel like my
changes everything.
favorite word for like during the pandemic, which I'm about
COVID
to
is not over,
I'm
people.
making a PSA. COVID is still happening.
Get your
I digress.
booster.
Put your mask on. Anyway, but my favorite word during like the heat of the pandemic, when I was like in the house, was like
Right.
construct. And I was
Yes.
like, this is a construct. I'm like, I get
Yes.
to,
Ooh.
like, what is this based in? And it was
Yeah.
actually one of my favorite things I was reading during the time was this philosopher. And he basically was saying that the only way to freedom is to revolt.
Ooh.
And so it's like
Okay.
you have to question everything
Yes.
as far as like why you believe it, how you came to believe it, who brought it to you to believe.
Right.
Yeah, and just where did this come from? And so so I just began to question everything around religion, around Blackness, around relationships, around just around so many things. And then and it led me back to the answers. And some were ones that I had already arrived at. But other ones
Yeah.
I'm like,
But
no.
now you have the confidence. in-
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, I believe that. It's not that I was handed this, like
Yeah.
a dirty pair of drawers, like, put them on. I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
Well,
I don't.
no.
I don't really
No.
understand. I understand what you're saying. I don't really want to
Brooke,
imagine
it's a
dirty.
Good
underwear.
metaphor.
No, it's not.
We have been handed dirty drawers our whole lives and told you're supposed to put these on because everybody else has. Put them on.
Okay, but then what do we say? I'm gonna either clean these drawers or
I'm
gonna-
throwing them
I'm throwing them away.
Wait,
I'm throwing-
wait.
I would like to knit my own pair of panties.
You know what? I don't like wearing panties.
You know what? I want to be free.
I want to be free.
I'm
not
gonna
putting
let
these
it
on.
all hang out.
I'm not wearing these. So, but I get to decide.
Yes.
Our producer was just ripping off some
Free yourself.
imaginary panties.
Free yourself. One of the things that we're going to do with this podcast that I love is we're not just keeping this conversation here amongst us, but we're taking it out, giving other women permission to speak their truths and be bold and share their stories too, and say, hey, y'all share with us without the judgment, and creating that space. So this conversation, what we do is put it up on social, as you ladies know. And so we put this question up on social, you know, what Black woman has impacted who you are today? You know, who's your favorite Black woman, or someone that, you know, has just been such a huge influence in your life that it shaped and formed the woman that you are today.
Yes.
And hear their opinions on the things that we're talking about. So the first person I want us to queue up, let's hear from Tamika.
Because I was raised in family dysfunction, I didn't have many women in my family that I could look up to. So I had to develop family elsewhere. So my godmom is amazing. She showed me what it's like to have family and to be a part of a unit where there's love unconditionally. Even when I was acting like a jerk face and was running away, she was still there and loving me and showing me what that looks like. And people like Lisa Nichols, Pinky Cole, oh my God, Pinky Cole, Iyanla, Maya Angelou, those are women that I looked up to. And I was so proud to see Black women who look like me and say to myself, wow, that is who I could become if I just keep going.
I love so much about what she said. I love her references of the different Black women. I mean, of course, from like Maya Angelou, but when she mentioned like Pinky Cole, who I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Pinky Cole is the owner and creator of Slutty Vegan.
Oh, okay.
That's Pinky Cole, right? Anybody else there know?
Fact check.
Christina? I feel like it is. Yeah, I just go to her Instagram real quick. I want to fact check. I'm pretty sure. I'm like
Credit
looking.
where credit is due.
I know, right? Y'all can. I am okay. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you. I was like, y'all can cut this if
Somebody else.
but no, like Pinky Cole, I remember when like Slutty Vegan became a thing, and she's another one that I feel like is our peer, but like makes it okay to be like, listen, this is what we look like. This is what it looks like when we do, you know, this, and I just love it.
I love the Black Forager, like in that same vein.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, she
Love
is
her.
so quirky and delightful, and I watch everything. Like
Everything.
Like I'm not ever gonna go into a forest and pick nothing out.
Oh yeah, no, this isn't helpful for
Right,
survival.
But I am going to watch her do it and enjoy her carefreeness
And be lifted. Like
Yes.
I always find myself in a better mood after I see one of her videos.
I mean, that's just talking about like social media and how even social media has been such a driving force in
Yeah.
allowing us to see representation in a way where
Right.
it doesn't all have to look like one thing and you got to fit into this box. But like you said, Austin, earlier, that you have your people, your community of, you know, whether it's quirky Black girls. Now it's like social is allowing us to be like,
connect. We finding each other.
We out here. We outside, y'all. Like, yes. And I love that now it's being celebrated in such a beautiful way. So shout out to Tamika for sharing that. We have another caller who's sharing her story. So we have Susie. Let's cue up Susie.
My name is Susie. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I consent to this video or this recording being used. Oh, I don't even know where to start. But as a young teacher in my 20s who really had no idea what I was doing and who had been in PWIs, like when I started working at a Black school and had Black women teach me how to be not just a teacher but a woman, they are definitely some of the most formative people in my life, and so grateful. Kim Huff was one of them, and I hadn't learned to use my voice yet, and she saw I was upset, and when she heard what I was upset about, she said, go tell the principal. The principal's wrong, you're right. Go tell her. And that changed my life.
Susie naming names.
Yeah.
Listen, Black women will tell you to speak up now. They tell you to speak up. Who did what?
Yeah.
She said what?
Facts. Yeah. So listen, I love that that's something that we're going to be doing with this segment, with this show, is that we're hearing from our friends on social, we're hearing like that whole kind of affirming one another, especially knowing like you're not alone. Like, I see you, girl. I see you for exactly who you are, and you belong here. Like, that's what I love about what we're going to be doing with this podcast and inviting other voices to share in this with us. So,
and like literally claiming your voice, kind of like she was saying that she got, you know, taught like that. Claim your voice, and it may be different from mine, but it's still valuable, and we want to validate it and hear it and celebrate it.
Ladies, thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable and sharing your stories. Thanks to our friends who also jumped in with the voice memos. We are going to be back for 8 weeks.
At least.
That'll be our first official season. So we hope that everyone will come back and join us as we dive into even more topics as we do our full reset.
Here for it.
they get juicier as we go.
Full Reset is a Herself Media production produced by Stephanie McBee. The team includes Austin Channing Brown, Jenny Booth Powder, Brooke Campbell, and Creative Thought Media. Our theme music was composed and performed by Grammy Award-winning artist Lecrae.